The investment model of relationships. So this is Resbolt's investment model. Now, the reason why it's called the investment model is because it is adding the idea of investments to social exchange theory. So it's not necessarily that investments are the most important feature of this model, it's just an addition to the social exchange theory. So as I said, it's an extension of social exchange theory. Now, it believes that commitment in a relationship is down to a high level of satisfaction within that relationship, that there are no alternatives that you would deem acceptable to have a relationship with, or to say the alternative of being single, and the investments are high. So satisfaction is the extent to which the other person fulfills the person's needs and whether they feel happy within that relationship. The quality of alternatives is the extent to which the individual's most important needs would be better fulfilled outside the current relationship, so either a new relationship or not being in that relationship. So whether they feel that they will be happier with someone else or being happier being single. Now, if they don't, they are going to be more committed to that relationship. Moving on to investment then, so that's the resources that are associated with the relationship, so and the importance of those relationships, so anything that you might lose if the relationship were to end. Now, there's two different types, intrinsic and extrinsic. So intrinsic are resources that you put directly into the relationship. Now, they can be both tangible and intangible. So tangible things are things that you can quantify, such as the money and the possessions that you put into the relationship, that you bought or you spent during that relationship. But equally, they can be resources that are intangible and difficult to quantify, such as the energy, the time, the emotion, and the self-disclosures that you made during that relationship. Now, extrinsic investments are resources that didn't feature in the relationship previously, but are now associated with it. So they're things that you could have bought together, possessions that you have made. So a car, a house, it could be mutual friends that you have developed during the relationship, and children that may be a product of that relationship. So if we were to look at an AO1 style question, now this is the only previous question that there has been. Investment is one feature of the investment model of relationships. Identify one other feature of the investment model of relationships. So it's just an identify, so you're simply going to name, state or name one of the other features. So it could be commitment, could be satisfaction, could be alternatives. So simply just the name of that, you don't need to explain it, it's just identify one other feature. So please don't try to overcomplicate it and waste time on these style questions. If we were to look at some AO3 then, evaluation, we have a meta-analysis, so 52 studies including 60 independent samples and approximately 11,582 participants, and it was found that satisfaction with, alternative to, and investments in relationships each correlated significantly with the commitment within a relationship, so it supports the idea of that theory. However, there are issues with meta-analysis and there may be biases within meta-analysis. So meta-analysis are subject to publication bias. So when we looked at peer review, we discussed the idea that it is research that tends to be significant or supports the status quo that gets published. Now, when researchers do meta-analysis, they only have access to the research that has been published. So therefore, they only have access to research that generally is significant and supports the status quo. So therefore, it might not be reflective of relationships, but is down to publication bias rather than actual each of those factors. Now, it's oversimplistic, so we've got a negative here. So there is more to investment than just the resources that you have already put into relationship. So it could be, some researchers have said that it even extends to investments that you would make in the future. So it's not necessarily both the intrinsic and extrinsic that you have at the time. It could be the idea of, oh, we will go on holiday, we will be buying a bigger house together, we will end up having children together. So they're the investments that you make for the future in a relationship. However, there are usefulness of this theory, so it can help to explain why abusive relationships happen and why people might stay within an abusive relationship. So the idea that they might have more investment in that relationship and that outweighs the satisfaction within that relationship, and therefore they will stay because maybe they have children together, they have a house together, they have a car together, and they don't feel that they would have those investments if they were to end the relationship. Now, in terms of testability, we have a strength that it is actually based on self-report methods. Now, I know we normally talk about the idea that self-report methods are not necessarily a good thing because they are down to social desirability bias and people might lie. However, self-report methods are useful in this sense because we want to understand people's perceptions of their relationship and of those factors, and self-report methods are the easiest way and the best way to assess whether they feel that they have investments or there are alternatives, or whether they are satisfied and whether that leads to them being committed or not. Moving on to the 16 markers, so the essay-based sort of style questions. So we have a straightforward outline and evaluate investment theory of relationships. So with this, you do your 2 AO1 paragraphs and then your 3 to 4 evaluation points. So you talk along the lines of the assumptions of the investment model. It's an extension of social exchange theory. It's based on the idea that commitment is the result of satisfaction, no alternatives, and a high level of investments. You talk about what satisfaction is, what quality of alternatives is, so whether that person would be better off in another relationship or simply not in the relationship at all. So that would be my, if I was to write it, that would be my first AO1 paragraph. Then my second AO1 paragraph would be about investment, and I talk about what the investment is. So this is the resources that you would stand to lose if you were to end the relationship, and the idea that you have extrinsic and intrinsic relationship, and describe both those, giving examples to demonstrate to the examiner that I understand what they mean. Now, in terms of another style question, now this is a bit more broader, so outline and evaluate one or more theories of the maintenance of romantic relationships. So I could talk about investment theory here, and I could talk about it in extreme detail. So I could just do one theory. So again, I'd do my 2 AO1 paragraphs of investment theory and then 3 to 4 evaluation points. Or I could do one or more theories. So I could do investment theory alongside equity theory, or investment theory alongside social exchange theory. So I do my AO1 paragraph on one of those theories. I would then evaluate that theory so it doesn't become too just disjointed. I would then go to my second theory and evaluate that, and then do my describe it, and then I would do my second theory evaluation. So it's up to you, it's not specifying, so you could either do investment theory or investment theory. You don't even have to do it in that type of question. You could have done social exchange theory and equity theory.